Under the roaring blizzard of Alaska, Ariana Hale, the only daughter of billionaire Alexander Hale, vanished without a trace. For 2 endless nights, the world searched. But heaven had already found her. Miles from any rescue team, she was discovered. Not by men, but by a pack of white wolves, their eyes glowing like lanterns of faith against the dark. They didn't harm her. They shielded her. They fed her warmth from their own breath. When rescue finally came, it wasn't salvation that arrived. It was greed. Guns, drones, and orders signed by her own father threatened to destroy the very creatures that saved his child. But Ariana stood between them, trembling, defiant, divine. Her voice, carried through the storm, spoke not just to her father, but to all of us who have forgotten how to see God's miracles in the wild. Under the northern lights, love broke through armor, and a family of men and beasts found redemption. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe and leave a like. Your support keeps stories of faith, courage, and second chances alive. May God bless you and remind us all that even in the coldest nights, miracles still breathe beneath the light of heaven. The world outside was nothing but white and wind. Snow swept across the Alaskan wilderness like shards of glass, shrieking between the black pines and clawing at the night. The temperature had dropped to 42 degrees, the kind of cold that silences everything but fear. 9-year-old Ariana Hale stumbled through the drifts, her breath ragged, her red parka shredded where the snowmobile had crashed hours earlier. She was small for her age, with soft brown hair matted to her face and eyes the pale gray of morning ice, her mother's eyes. Her mittens were gone, her hands raw and trembling. Every step she took sank deep into snow that swallowed sound. Somewhere in the distance, metal groaned, the wreck of the escort vehicle that had been carrying her home. She called out, her voice breaking against the wind. "Dad!" Only the echo answered. Then nothing. Ariana's father, Alexander Hale, was a man whose name opened doors and closed mouths. 52, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver at his temples and lines carved deep from years of command. The founder of Hale Energy, he was both admired and feared. To the world, he was a titan. To his daughter, a stranger who spoke more to shareholders than to her. His wife, Dr. Evelyn Marin Hale, had been the opposite. Slender, radiant, her face always half hidden behind a camera lens or a field notebook. She'd studied wolves, calling them the silent teachers of mercy. When her helicopter went down in the Yukon 5 years earlier, Alexander buried her with a press release and built a wind farm on the very land she'd tried to protect. Ariana had never forgiven him. Now, trudging through the blizzard, she thought of her mother's stories, of white wolves who guided lost souls through snowstorms, of bonds older than blood. But fairy tales don't save freezing children. Her legs buckled. She fell to her knees, chest heaving, frost biting her eyelashes. Then she heard it, a sound different from the wind, low, rhythmic, breathing. 2 golden eyes glowed through the curtain of snow. Ariana's heart slammed in her chest. A wolf, massive and ghost pale, emerged from the dark. Its fur shimmered with frost, its head level, gaze steady, neither threat nor welcome. Behind it, shadows moved. 5 more, smaller, cautious, an entire pack. Her mother had once told her, "Never look a wild thing in the eye unless you mean to speak its language." So Ariana lowered her gaze. She didn't run. She couldn't. She simply whispered, voice shaking, "Please, help me." The wolf stepped closer. Its breath steamed in the air, warm against her numb skin. Then, astonishingly, it pressed its muzzle against her shoulder. A nudge, gentle but insistent. She followed its movement without thinking. The alpha turned, padding ahead through the snow, pausing every few steps to look back. She understood. Follow me. They moved through the storm, as if the world had narrowed to their footprints. Her mind drifted between exhaustion and a strange calm. Once, she stumbled, and something rough brushed her cheek. The wolf's fur, steadying her. She leaned on it like a living wall. They reached a narrow cleft in a rock face, a cave hidden by snow and shadow. The wolf entered first, shaking off the frost. Inside, the air was still, the ground blanketed in dry moss and old bones. Ariana crawled in, collapsing near the back. The pack gathered around her, their breathing slow and synchronized like a heartbeat. The alpha lay beside her, curling its enormous body around hers. Warmth seeped through her soaked clothes, the scent of earth and wildness filling her lungs. For the first time in hours, she stopped shaking. Her mind drifted toward memory, her mother's laughter in a field of snow lilies, her father's distant voice on a phone call, the hollow sound of doors closing in marble halls. And now this, fur against her face, the steady rhythm of breath. It felt like forgiveness. Outside, the storm thickened. Far away, a search helicopter cut through the clouds, its red lights blinking against the white abyss. Inside, pilot Tom Rivera, a burly Alaskan with a beard iced stiff and eyes weary from 20 years of rescue missions, squinted at his radar. "Signal keeps flickering," he muttered to his co-pilot. "Could be her. Could be static." The machine's sensors hissed and went dark. Magnetic interference from the storm. "Damn it," Rivera whispered. "We're flying blind." Back in the cave, the wolves stirred. The alpha's ears twitched. A low rumble rippled through its chest, not at the storm, but at something beyond. Ariana lifted her head. She heard it too. Not the thump of rotors, but a click. Metal on metal. Through the curtain of snow outside the cave, a shadow shifted. A man knelt among the trees, wrapped in white camouflage. His name was Silas Crane, 40, gaunt and weathered, his beard flecked with frost and eyes sharp as a blade. A licensed wildlife contractor, he'd once been a park ranger until an illegal poaching scandal cost him his badge. Since then, he'd hunted for money, not food, and nothing paid like rare wolves. He peered through the scope of his tranquilizer rifle, breath steady. 6 wolves, 1 alpha, he whispered into his radio. Moving into cover. I've got line of sight." Then, through his scope, he saw movement. A child inside the pack. Silas blinked, uncertain. "What the?" In that instant, the alpha wolf rose, fur bristling. It turned toward the cave entrance and pushed Ariana backward with its shoulder, forcing her deeper into the dark. The girl froze, confused, afraid. She didn't understand, but the wolf did. Something outside had chosen her for prey. And for the first time since the storm began, Ariana's fear returned, sharp and cold as the wind itself. To be continued, morning came thin and gray, the kind of light that had to fight its way through frost. Inside the cave, Ariana woke to the sound of soft breathing. The pack was still there, coiled in shades of white and silver, their bodies rising and falling in rhythm. The largest, the alpha female, slept closest to her, muzzle resting on its paws, one amber eye half open, even in rest. Ariana watched the creature with quiet awe. Dried blood clung to the fur along its flank, a dark crust against snow white. When she reached out, she felt the faint ridge of a metal collar hidden beneath the coat. Scratched letters gleamed. Project Luna, AWCP. A tranquilizer dart scar marked the skin beneath. Someone had tried to capture her recently. The realization struck hard. These wolves weren't wild enemies. They were survivors. Her stomach growled, breaking the stillness. She rummaged through her parka and found a strip of frozen jerky. The alpha lifted its head, eyes sharp, but not hostile. Ariana tore the jerky in half, extending a piece toward the smaller pup who'd been pressed against her side all night. The pup, no larger than a house cat, had one ear bent and pale gray markings like snow shadows across its fur. It crept closer, sniffed, then took the offering delicately. The alpha watched, then exhaled softly, a sound that felt like approval. Far away, in a concrete facility warmed by humming computers, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, director of the Arctic Wolf Conservation Program, rubbed her temples. She was in her early 40s, hair black streaked with white, skin olive-toned and weathered by field years before bureaucracy confined her. On her desk lay a file labeled ATDOCP Incident Report. Project Luna. "We've lost telemetry on the white pack again," she said to her assistant. Her voice was low but clipped, the voice of someone who'd learned to cut emotion out of science. The assistant, a young biologist named Mark Teller, thin and earnest, with a constant air of apology, tapped on a tablet. "Last ping was 16 hours ago, near Hale Ridge." Elena frowned. "Hale, as in the Billionaire's property line?" Mark hesitated. "Yes, ma'am. There's also a new emergency directive from Hale Energy. Public safety order for wolf removal across the northern perimeter. It's marked immediate execution." Elena's jaw tightened. Of course it is. When the rich lose something, nature always pays first. Meanwhile, Ariana spent the day learning the rhythm of her new world. The alpha, she began calling her Luna, moved with regal precision, leading the pack from the cave at dawn. They hunted silently through the white forest, their breath clouds merging with the mist. Ariana followed at a distance, copying the way Luna avoided direct stares, how the wolves curved around one another rather than meeting head-on. She understood now. This was their language of distance, respect without submission, connection without intrusion. It was almost human in its grace. When they returned, Luna limped slightly, favoring the leg with the dart scar. Ariana's small hands worked with care, melting snow in her cupped palms to wash the wound. Luna tolerated it, eyes closing briefly, as if remembering another human touch, perhaps her mother's. The thought stabbed Ariana's chest, sharp and sudden. She whispered to the wolf, "You're not the only one they hurt." Back at the research center, Elena stood before a live map. Red dots pulsed across the screen, tracker signals. But one dot blinked irregularly, fading in and out. "That's Luna," she murmured. Then a second heat signature appeared beside it, human-sized, moving with the pack. "What the hell?" Elena zoomed in. Coordinates placed them deep in Hale Valley. She reached for the phone, but before she could dial, a man entered the control room. He wore a Park Service jacket, tall and lean, with gray stubble and glacier blue eyes. Ranger Wyatt Stone, the liaison between the state and corporate conservation teams. Wyatt had been in the service 30 years, quiet, methodical, the kind of man who carried a calm like armor. "We've got orders from Hale Security," he said evenly. "Deploy capture drones. They want the wolves tagged or tranquilized by sundown." Elena shot him a glare. "They're not your property." "Neither's the girl they're with," Wyatt replied. Satellite picked up movement, child-sized. Missing person alert fits the timeline. In the valley, the first mechanical hum reached Ariana's ears just after dusk. A faint whir, high-pitched and unnatural. Luna's head snapped up. The pack scattered, vanishing into drifts. Ariana followed Luna uphill through deep snow. Above them, something moved. Small black shapes gliding through the gray light. Drones. Each carried a flashing red lens that swept like an eye. From a ridge half a mile away, Wyatt peered through binoculars while radioing his team. "Visual confirmed. 2 heat signatures. Human and alpha wolf." The crosshair icon locked. "Prepare dart." Elena's voice crackled through his headset. "Wyatt, stop! We don't know who that girl is and Luna's wounded. A misfire could kill her." But orders overrode caution. A voice from Hale Security overrode them both. "Target confirmed. Fire." Ariana crouched behind a rock as a dart sliced the air and struck the snow beside her. The pup yelped. Luna whirled, her fur flaring like storm clouds. Another drone dipped lower, mechanical arms clicking. Ariana's heart hammered. She saw her own reflection in the red lens, small and terrified. She remembered her mother's words. "Wolves don't choose sides. They choose balance." She stood up slowly, spreading her arms. "Stop! They're not hurting anyone!" She screamed into the wind. On Wyatt's monitor, 2 blurs merged. Child and wolf, standing together. "Hold your fire," he whispered, lowering his rifle. But another operator didn't hear, or didn't care. The trigger clicked again, the drone's targeting light fixed on them both. Luna's amber eyes glowed in its beam as the tranquilizer dart launched straight toward the girl and the wolf. The tranquilizer dart sliced through the air with a faint hiss, but before it could strike, Luna lunged. The great white wolf shoulder slammed into Ariana, knocking her into the snow. The dart tore a strip from her sleeve and buried itself harmlessly in the ice. A shrill mechanical whine echoed overhead. The drone adjusted its aim, red sensors sweeping the clearing. Luna's snarl split the silence like thunder. In that instant, the entire pack burst into motion. 6 pale bodies streaked across the snow, weaving around Ariana as if guided by one mind. The storm swallowed their shapes as they fled downhill through a maze of birch trees, branches whipping against their fur. Ariana ran, stumbling to keep up. Her lungs burned with cold, her vision blurred by tears and wind. The world was a blur of white and gray until the forest opened onto a ravine. Below, a black river cut through the ice like an open wound. A narrow arch of snow and frozen mist stretched across it. A bridge carved by nature's cruelty. Steam rose from cracks in the ice, creating a shimmering veil. Ariana's heart pounded. "The heat," she whispered, realization striking. "It hides us." The moisture rising from the river could mask their body heat from the drone's infrared scanners. It was their only chance. Luna seemed to understand. She nudged the girl toward the bridge, eyes fierce and knowing. One by one, the wolves crossed, their paws light and quick. The snow groaned under their weight. Ariana followed, every step a prayer. The drone's red beam flitted over the trees behind them. Far above the valley, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the feed from the control center. Her face was drawn tight, illuminated by the pale blue glow of screens. "The wolf's protecting the child," she murmured. Her assistant Mark glanced nervously at her. "Orders say capture both. They think the girl's in danger." Elena's hands hovered over the controls. She had spent half her life studying creatures like Luna, believing in coexistence. But bureaucracy cared little for belief. "Keep the drones at distance," she ordered, her voice cracking slightly. "No lethal fire unless confirmed threat." At the far end of the operations tent, Commander Pierce Dalton entered, a man in his late 40s, built like a soldier carved from stone. His face was angular, jaw perpetually clenched, and a faded scar crossed his right cheek. Once a Marine, now head of Hale Security, he carried himself like a man who no longer trusted words. "Dr. Rodriguez," he said, tone flat, "I'll take command of this operation. We've got an asset to retrieve and a public relations disaster to contain. The board's watching." Elena turned toward him, eyes sharp. "That asset is a 9-year-old girl and a wounded animal." Pierce didn't flinch. "And both are walking liabilities. The wolves are tagged research property. The girl, she's the Hale heir. If something happens, none of us keep our jobs." His voice carried no malice, only weary pragmatism. Years of crisis management had drained any trace of compassion from him. Meanwhile, in the valley, Another figure moved unseen through the storm. Silas Crane, the private hunter who'd once fired on Luna, crouched behind a rock ledge overlooking the ravine. His face was a mask of ice and shadow, but his eyes gleamed with greed. He wore a patchwork of white camouflage and fur, the same outfit he'd worn during his expulsion from the Park Service years ago. Losing his badge for illegal trading had broken him. Now, he hunted for whoever paid best. The satellite phone at his hip crackled. "Target confirmed. 2 specimens. Recovery bonus applies." Silas smiled, a smile without warmth. He raised his rifle, lining the scope with Luna's silhouette. Ariana reached the midpoint of the bridge. Snow shifted beneath her boots. A crack echoed like thunder. "Luna!" she screamed. The Alpha turned, ears pricked. The drone above adjusted its lens, its targeting system confused by the heat rising from the river. Inside the command tent, Elena saw 2 blurs merge into one. "Stop the fire!" she shouted. But Pierce overrode her. "Take the shot!" A tranquilizer dart launched again, but this one didn't come from the drone. It came from Silas's rifle. The dart sliced through the mist toward the bridge. Luna leapt sideways, shoving Ariana just as the dart struck the ice. The impact shattered the fragile crust. With a roar, the bridge cracked open. Ariana slipped, her scream swallowed by wind as she fell toward the abyss. Luna lunged, jaws snapping around the cuff of her hat. For a moment, they hung suspended, child dangling above a river of black water, wolf straining to hold her. From above, the drone's camera caught the image, a girl and a wolf linked by a thread of survival, the snowstorm raging around them. Elena's breath caught. "My God," she whispered. In the next second, the ice gave way further. Luna's paws scrambled for purchase, claws gouging into the edge. She howled, deep, guttural, defiant. The sound carried through the canyon, echoing like thunder. Silas lowered his rifle slightly, momentarily frozen by what he saw. For the first time in years, something, perhaps guilt, perhaps recognition, passed across his hardened features. He'd seen that same desperate strength once before, in another creature he'd wounded long ago. But he shook it off. There was still money to be made. He reloaded, finger steady on the trigger. Back at the command tent, chaos erupted. "We lost visual!" Mark shouted as the drone's feed dissolved into static. Elena slammed her headset onto the table. "They're on that bridge! They'll die if we don't—" But Pierce cut her off. "We're not risking men on an ice ledge. Pull back the drones. Wait it out." She glared at him. "That's a child." He met her eyes, unblinking. "So is my daughter. And I learned long ago not every child gets saved." The scar on his cheek twisted as he turned away. In the canyon, Luna dug her claws into the ice, muscles trembling. Ariana dangled, arms outstretched, her face pale but determined. "Don't let go," she gasped. The wolf growled, pulling with everything left in her body. Snow cascaded around them, white flames in the blizzard's fury. For a heartbeat, Time froze. Girl and wolf suspended between death and devotion. The bridge cracked completely. The snow gave way beneath Luna's paws. Ariana screamed as she slipped free, only to feel Luna's teeth tighten on her coat, both of them plunging downward into the dark chasm below. The fall felt endless. Cold, rushing air, and the roar of the river below. But it ended with a crash that stole the breath from Ariana's lungs. She landed on a ledge of ice just above the dark current. Luna landed beside her, limping, her fur wet with meltwater. The wolf shook off snow and looked down at the girl with amber eyes sharp as flame. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Luna stepped closer and gripped Ariana's jacket with her teeth, dragging her away from the edge. Ariana's chest heaved as she crawled onto solid ground. She was alive. They both were. Above, the storm had thinned into sheets of drifting ice mist. The bridge had collapsed entirely, leaving jagged white edges that hung over the ravine like broken teeth. The pack howled from the other side, a cry of mourning and warning all at once. Ariana turned toward Luna, whose paw was bleeding where the ice had sliced deep. Her hands trembled as she tore the hem of her parka to wrap the wound. "You saved me," she whispered. Luna's breath puffed in the air like smoke, her gaze steady. Then Ariana felt the small wooden pendant hanging from her neck, the only thing her mother had left her. It was carved from pale pine, shaped like a teardrop, and hollowed to form a whistle. She raised it to her lips and blew softly. A single, haunting note carried through the frozen valley. The sound seemed to still the wind itself. Luna froze. The other wolves across the gorge stopped howling. For a long moment, the only sound was that lingering tone fading into silence. Miles away, in the command tent, Dr. Elena Rodriguez looked up sharply. The sound came through her headset, faint but clear. A wooden whistle. Her fingers went cold. "Wait," she murmured. "I know that sound." She pulled up a long-forgotten archive file from the conservation servers. Field audio, Yukon Research Expedition, Dr. Evelyn Marin Hale. The same note played in the recording. "No," Elena whispered. Her heart hammered as she scanned the attached report. Evelyn Hale, wildlife biologist, deceased 5 years ago, had once led the initial study on the Luna pack. The wolves that saved Ariana were the very same herd her mother had fought to protect. Elena turned toward Commander Pierce Dalton, who stood by the monitors, arms crossed. "That whistle," she said, voice trembling with urgency. "It belonged to Evelyn Hale. These wolves are from her project. That girl is her daughter." Pierce's eyes narrowed, his scar pulling taut. "Then that makes this even more of a liability. If the media gets this, Hale Energy looks like it's hunting its founder's own legacy." Elena snapped. "You don't understand. Evelyn proposed a permanent sanctuary for that pack years ago. Your board rejected it. These wolves shouldn't even be in danger." Pierce's tone hardened. "We're beyond philosophy, Doctor. We have an endangered child and armed poachers in the same valley." His words were almost drowned out by static. The drone feed flickered violently, then went black. A gunshot echoed through the comms, sharp and close. "They've taken out Drone 3, Mark shouted, his voice shaking. Elena leaned over his shoulder, scanning the frozen image. A muzzle flash in the trees, and a blurred figure below the ravine. It was Silas Crane. The hunter had survived the storm, crouched behind a ridge with his rifle. His face was gaunt beneath the frost, eyes fever bright. "Target in sight," he hissed into his radio. "Wolf with juvenile specimen confirmed." The voice on the other end was not government. It was corporate, filtered and distorted. "Capture alive. Evidence is payment." Silas smiled a thin, bitter smile. "Alive costs extra." He loaded a steel dart, filled not with tranquilizer, but a tracking serum. Illegal, lethal in high dose. He sighted down the barrel. The scope's crosshair centered on the small pup that had followed Ariana from the den. Ariana turned just in time to see the glint of metal. She didn't think. She ran. Her boots slipped on ice, her arms spread as she threw herself between the hunter and the wolf. The dart fired, hissing past her ear, striking the snow inches from Luna's paw. Luna spun, lips curling, a growl rolling deep from her chest. The pup pressed close to Ariana's leg, trembling. Above, the rhythmic thump of helicopter blades grew louder. Snow swirled in spirals as the search chopper descended through the canyon mist. Its spotlight cut a silver cone through the storm. Through the open side door stood Alexander Hale himself, wind tearing at his gray hair. He was wrapped in a heavy navy coat, face pale from days without sleep. The sight of his daughter below, the girl he thought lost, made his throat close. "Ariana!" he shouted into the loudspeaker. "Don't move! I'm here!" She looked up, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Dad!" But in the chaos of wind and noise, she didn't see what was happening behind him. One of Hale's security guards, Briggs, a broad man with sun-scorched skin and close-cropped hair, was loading a rifle-shaped launcher. His expression was professional, detached. He had been told there was a dangerous animal threatening the heiress. "Non-lethal tranquilizer ready," he said to Pierce through the headset. "Permission to fire?" "Fire on my mark," Pierce answered coldly from the command tent. Elena spun toward him. "If you hit that wolf, she could fall with the girl." "Then you'd better pray my man's aim is true," he said. Below, Ariana clutched Luna's fur. The helicopter hovered closer, blades roaring. Luna stood firm between her and the rifle's glint from above, hackles rising. The pup whined. Silas crouched behind his rock, cursing the interruption, finger still on his trigger. Through her headset, Elena's voice broke. "Alexander, for God's sake, call your man off!" But in the next instant, over the thundering rotor wash, came Alexander's voice through the loudspeaker, shaking, desperate, and echoing down the canyon walls. "Ariana, don't be afraid!" And behind him, the guard's finger pulled the trigger. The tranquilizer dart launched from the helicopter, streaking toward the white wolf that stood protectively over the billionaire's daughter. While in the shadows below, the real hunter took aim again. The dart streaked through the air, a silver glint against the gray sky, but it never reached its mark. Luna spun, faster than instinct, and the dart shattered against a rock. The echo rang through the valley like a warning bell. Ariana stood frozen between the world of men and the wild, her small body framed in the harsh glow of the helicopter's searchlight. Wind whipped her hair into her eyes, her cheeks raw and flushed, yet her voice, when it came, cut through the storm with a clarity no adult could match. "Stop!" she shouted, her words trembling but fierce. "You'll hurt them." Alexander Hale leaned forward from the helicopter door, gripping the safety bar with white-knuckled hands. His face, once the emblem of calm power on magazine covers, was pale and wet with melting snow. The man who had built empires couldn't control the tremor in his voice now. "Ariana, please, step back. Those animals are dangerous. They saved me," she cried. "When your people were too afraid to come, they stayed. When I fell, she pulled me up." Her eyes flicked to Luna, the white wolf standing silent beside her like a sentinel carved from frost. The animal's ears flattened, not in fear, but in confusion. She didn't understand words, only the pulse beneath them, the love, the desperation, the truth. In the command tent, Dr. Elena Rodriguez pressed a hand to her headset. "Hold fire, for God's sake!" she barked at Briggs. "You hit that wolf. You hit the girl." But the man's training was mechanical. He lowered his rifle only when Pierce's gravel voice came through the comms. "Stand down!" The storm began to die. The snow fell slower now, as though the world itself held its breath. Ariana took a step forward, facing the helicopter. "Dad," she said, quieter now. "You don't know them, but Mom did." She fumbled inside her parka and pulled out the worn photograph she had carried since childhood. Her mother, Dr. Evelyn Hale, kneeling in a field of snow, smiling as a white wolf nuzzled her cheek. She held it up high toward the spotlight. She called them Luna's family, the ones she promised to protect. The photo flashed across the cameras of every news crew hovering on standby outside the cordon. The story was already spreading. Billionaire's daughter found alive with endangered wolves. Alexander's aide inside the chopper, a short man with wire frame glasses named Leon Maris, leaned in to whisper, "Sir, we're live on global feeds. If you fire, this becomes corporate suicide." Maris had worked under Hale for 15 years, loyal and calculating, a man whose moral compass usually bent toward profit. But even he looked uneasy now. Down below, Luna's pack began to emerge from the tree line. Silent, regal, unafraid. Ariana raised her mother's whistle to her lips and blew. The note floated upward, clear and haunting. One by one, the wolves lifted their heads to the sky and howled in harmony, their voices merging with the wind. It wasn't a threat. It was an answer. On the monitors, Dr. Rodriguez felt tears rise unbidden. "Evelyn," she whispered to herself, "your daughter's finishing what you started." She turned toward the command mic. "Mr. Hale," she said, her tone professional, yet trembling with conviction. "Your daughter is right. Those wolves are the remnants of the Luna Project, your late wife's life's work. You're hunting your own legacy." Alexander froze. The words hit like a blow. The past came rushing back. The debates, the signatures, the day he'd refused Evelyn's final proposal to designate Luna Valley as a protected zone. He had called it a waste of resources. That same night, she'd flown north to finish her research, and the crash had taken her away. He looked down now at the girl below, the same eyes, the same defiant fire. The wind whipped the photo from Ariana's hand, sending it spiraling upward until it brushed against the helicopter's windshield. For a heartbeat, it hovered there. Evelyn and the wolf, smiling through time. Alexander reached for the radio. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Cease all containment operations. This ends now." Pierce's response was cold. "Sir, that's a breach of directive." "Then consider it rewritten," Alexander snapped. He turned toward the camera feeds, knowing the world was watching. "Effective immediately. Hale Energy will fund the establishment of the Luna Sanctuary. 10,000 hectares of protected land under joint management of the Arctic Wolf Conservation Program and local communities. The Luna Pack will be free." Elena's breath caught. Mark whooped in disbelief. "Did he just—" "Yes," she said, smiling through tears. "He did." On the ground, Silas Crane tried to slip away through the trees, but the spotlight caught him. He turned, face twisted, and raised his rifle in desperation. A shot rang out. Not his. Wyatt Stone, the ranger, stepped from the shadows, his rifle trained and steady. "End of the trail, Crane," he said, voice low and steady. Silas dropped the weapon and sank to his knees. Years of running finally ended under the weight of the storm's silence. Ariana turned back toward Luna. The wolf stepped close, pressing her nose to the girl's forehead. The touch was brief, but full of meaning. Farewell, gratitude, promise. The pup yipped softly beside them, tail wagging uncertainly. Luna nuzzled him once, then lifted her head toward the mountains. The pack turned and moved toward the trees, snow curling around their paws like smoke. The helicopter's engines powered down. Alexander descended slowly, his boots crunching into the snow. When he reached his daughter, he removed his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. For the first time in years, he smiled. Not the polite smile of a CEO, but the fragile, human one of a man rediscovering his heart. "I've made more mistakes than I can count," he said softly, "but I can still learn from you and from them." Above them, the clouds parted. The first ribbon of green light unfurled across the night sky, the Aurora blooming over Luna Valley. It danced across the snow like the breath of the earth itself. Ariana leaned against her father's chest, watching the wolves vanish into the wild, and whispered, "Freedom doesn't mean goodbye." Alexander followed her gaze, eyes glistening. "No," he murmured, "it means beginning again." When the last echo of the wolves' howls faded into the wind, the world seemed to pause, as if heaven itself had leaned closer to listen. In that frozen valley, its greed had met the innocence of creation. Something divine unfolded, not in thunder or lightning, but in a whisper, the kind that only hearts softened by love can hear. It was the whisper of forgiveness. Perhaps God's greatest miracles aren't cast from light, nor announced by angels. Perhaps they come quietly, through a lost child who chooses mercy over fear, through a beast that protects instead of kills, through a father who remembers how to love. Luna's howl beneath the aurora wasn't just the cry of a wolf. It was a prayer returned to the sky, reminding us that compassion is the purest language of heaven. Each day in our busy, restless lives, we walk past small miracles, a kind word that stops someone's despair, a hand that steadies us when we fall, a moment of silence where we hear our own soul speak. We may never face a blizzard or a wolf, but we all face storms inside ourselves. And when we do, perhaps the same God who watched over that girl in the snow still watches over us, whispering, "Be still. I am here." If this story touched your heart, let it not end here. Share it, to remind the world that faith still walks among us, sometimes on four paws. Leave a comment to tell your story of hope, and subscribe if you believe love, forgiveness, and miracles still have a place in this world. May God bless every soul watching, guide you through your own storms, and fill your nights, just like He did for Ariana and Luna, with light that never fades.